Coach White, welcome to the basketball podcast.
Glad to be here, man. I've always been a big fan of you and what you've done for basketball, and I've watched a lot of your videos and things that you explain through the sport, and I'm just very honored to be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I had a chance to spend some time with you at USAB and get to know you a little bit more. And I'm looking forward to this and all of our future conversations. And Coach, you just recently you posted the 500th. I know you won it last year, but what I love about it is the messaging around it. 500 wins. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, man, it's hard to believe. I can remember my very first game when I coached, and I did win it, but I can remember it, and to be years later to be able to get that milestone again, 500 wins. You see a lot of people doing it, and people who've done it, and you just always say, "Man, I don't think I'll ever make it that far, or I won't get to that milestone, maybe." But when you get there, it's pretty good feelings. 500, pretty good rides home, and it's one of those things, man. You just like to say, you don't think about it when you first start. You just go out there and you just try to see what happens.
We've seen some good things happen, and we're going to talk about some of the reasons behind 500, and that's going to be great for all of us to learn more. And maybe let's just start with kind of these things around establishing the winning culture, the winning program. You've done it at multiple places as well, which is why you can speak to this in a really good light. So maybe talk to us a little bit about building that winning culture.
I think it starts with, for myself, it's about my commitment to start with. I have to be fully fledged in, and I've got to be doing the things I need to do to stay on top of my game and stay sharp and keep my blade sharp. And you have to be vested as a coach first. And that means like I've spent plenty of time at clinics. Spent plenty of time studying and reading over different guys, watching your stuff. Just I think you have to be fully vested as a coach and committed to what it is you want to accomplish. And then when it gets to the players, what you emphasize is what you get. And I feel being able to go into different situations. When I first started my high school coaching career, I was at a school that had won 3 games before I got there. I inherited a program that was not really a staple of a program in the city. And I just made it my own. And we were able to do some great things during my tenure there. And then I was able to land a position at a brand new school where I did not inherit the team I had to start the culture from scratch. I didn't inherit a culture. And that was a different deal because now you build everything from the ground up and you build it the way you want it to be. And having the experience of inheriting a culture, so to speak, and then having the experience of building a culture from the ground really helped me as a coach because it was two different dynamics. You have to go in and change a culture from one, and then one you have to come in for the other one and kind of build it exactly the way you want it. And through the hard work, commitment, the sacrifice, all those things you want to install in those, or instill in those players and into the program, you get to lay all that stuff out from the ground up. And so I've been fortunate with that because it gave me some valuable experience in both areas. When I got to Pace, again, I inherited a culture and I was well astute on how to go about changing the culture and making it the culture I figured that would make us successful. And it really comes down to just the experience factor of being able to go in and establish what it is you're trying to get established.
So for say new coaches that are taking over a program, where do you personally like to start? Does it start off the court or does it start on the court?
I think it starts off the court. I think a lot of times younger coaches, they think it's all about the X's and O's, and it's really not to begin with. You got to have your organization in place, and you're the CEO of this program, and so you've got to act as such. And you go out and like when I first landed the job, I always think first 50 days. What do I want to do in the first 50 days? What do I want to get accomplished? Whether it's get to meet the players, get to meet the parents, get to have individual workout sessions with each player, just so I can get a feel myself of what their skill level is and what we're working with and what are they bringing to the table. And it also give me a chance to get to know them in that process. And then you will start building a team and you start thinking about things that are going to be centered around a team and how you want them to be in, whatever time of the year you start, whether it's the summer or whether it's the spring or what have you, the fall. You've got to find ways to be able to bring those guys together, whether it's through training, whether it's through excursions with the team, where you go out and you do team bonding. But the whole point of it is you have to find different ways of bringing them together. And like I say, it can be blood, sweat, and tears that bring them together because the hard work that comes. So I would just tell younger coaches, again, don't be so locked in on X's and O's from the jump. you want to get out there and you want to set your organization in place and lay some groundwork in that area. It's almost like I said, being a CEO. As a CEO, you got to think like that. You got to think not through the microscope, but through the telescope. You look at it through the microscope, you're just looking at it for what it is right there in front of you. But when you look at it through the telescope, you can see everything that's out there in front of you and what's to come. And I think that's the biggest thing with younger coaches and going into a situation like that.
I love that approach, microscope, not telescope. You reference parents, and that's obviously a big question. I know I get asked a lot, and I'm sure you get asked a lot about how to manage parents, how to put them on your team, so to speak. Can you give us some ideas about how you've managed parents over the years?
You know what made me become, I want to say, I don't want to say an expert, but got me more experienced in this was when I became a parent. And because you got to look at it from their perspective, but you also got to look at it from your perspective as a coach. Because as a parent, you see your kid. As a coach, 12 players. And you don't see the individual, you see the team. But you got to understand a parent, this is they're investing into this with their kid. And so you have to be cognizant of that. And you also, again, you got to treat it as such. And I'm just fortunate I'm a parent, so I can relate to how my thought is with my kid. Even though I'm a coach, I see my kid out there. But fortunately, because I'm a coach, I can see the team as well. But I think it's one of those things where put yourself in their shoes and they got to put themselves in your shoes at times too. But with parents, I'm very direct. I try to be very truthful with them because it's a truth business. And the more truth tellers that the kid has and that the parent has, it makes everything a little bit better from that standpoint. I've always had a policy where if a parent want to come speak with me about their players, I'm very open to it. But when I do that, I like to have the player there as well because I want them to be able to speak to what it is that we're talking about because they're there every day, not the parent. And so a lot of times I think coaches get caught up in just meeting with the parent, but I think it's very important that the player is there as well so that they can be a part of that process and they can be able to advocate for themselves as well in that. But for coaches, again, it comes with experience. It doesn't happen overnight with parents. I've been fortunate enough I don't have a lot of parental challenges in that area because again, organization is big too. They like to know what's going on when it's going on. And if you do those things well, you stymie some of the things that could arise in that area because you're very organized and you know exactly what direction you're going in. And I think that helps too.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's proven by research by a lot of different institutes that study youth sport that the number one complaint of parents is communication from the coach about schedule, and the organization part that you just referenced is arguably the most important part for a parent. Playing time and some of that stuff, certainly that's all part of it, but most of it is around scheduling. And you know that as a parent, I know that as a parent. Sometimes we just literally we just want to know when the game is, when the practice is, when the tournament is, etc. So getting on top of that is big, isn't it?
Absolutely. I like with my parents, and I think again, it's a learning curve with that because you like I say, most coaches they thinking, oh, I got to figure out how to be able to run this flex offense and be able to score out of a timeout and things of that nature. But your biggest challenges ahead is to make sure you're organized and so that parents are informed and that your lines of communication are clear. And again, I send out a year, like a season long calendar. I don't just send out bits and pieces. I send out from day one to day whenever it ends. And hopefully that's a state championship or what have you. But we plan it all the way out day by day so they'll know. Because, again, there are family outings, there are vacations. But if they know it, they're going to be more in tune to make sure that they stay in line with whatever it is you want to do. I remember my first couple years, I didn't do this, and a family will pop up and say, "Hey, we're going out of town during Christmas. Oh, we got a tournament. What are we doing?" We didn't know, and that was a lesson I learned. But I'm glad for that lesson because now it wasn't fun then, but like now I understand that aspect. And also I understand it as a parent because we plan things and we say, all right, we're going to do this. And then we got to check the schedule first, though. If there's a schedule available for us to check, we got to check it. And if it doesn't line up, hey, we won't be, let's say, going, or we'll be here watching basketball for my son or my daughter's a cheerleader. Like we'll be doing that. Again, I think it's very important.
So for you, maybe a different word, but non-negotiables. Do you have non-negotiables for your players? And then do you have non-negotiables for your parents?
My non-negotiables for my players are I believe in hard work. I've lived it. I've watched my parents work hard. I've had to work hard. I think hard work is a non-negotiable for me. You have to work hard. And I think that's a life lesson and a life value that they all can benefit from. So that's why it's a non-negotiable for me. If you come in my practice, you're going to see our guys are going to play extremely hard. You watch our games, they're going to play extremely hard. And if they don't, they'll the ones who don't, they'll stick out like a sore thumb. And so that's why it's not a lot of room for it to be something that we negotiate. So that's the biggest thing with my players. That's the biggest non-negotiable. You got to work hard, whether it's on the court, whether it's off the court, because hard work is going to carry you a long way in life. For the parents, so much is when I say non-negotiable for parents, because that's a sticky area. But what I don't do, I don't really discuss playing time because I feel like players determine playing time. And of course, everybody wants their kids to play every minute of every game, but that's not the reality. And then practice dictates that with players, and again, I don't really talk playing time. I just don't discuss playing time because I feel like it's up to me and my staff based on what we see every day to determine that. And again, that can be sticky points for some people, but I think again, it goes back to how clear and direct are you with your parents from the beginning? And that makes a big difference because if you're not clear and direct and you're not being straightforward and truthful with them, those things can come off as a surprise and it can make everybody's life miserable, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I imagine you're not just a good communicator, you're an over communicator, which is also good for parents. And I love
Absolutely.
that aspect of that. And you mentioned looking at your program with a telescope, and I love that analogy. When building your program, let's talk about specifically on the court now. What are
Mhm.
your first steps to ensure your long-term success when you start practice and you start with your team?
For us, I've compiled just from years of experience a master practice plan. And what that master practice plan has on it is every single thing that we need to be going over as we build toward playing a game, whether it's sideline out of bound plays, whether it's press offense, whether it's and then it gives me like a guide. It serves as like a guide for me. So when I'm building my practice, especially at the beginning of the year, okay, I got this covered. We went over this. We got to go over it. And I think having that type of guide or having that type of point of reference, it helps you as you plan your practices out as you go through them. But when we start the year off, I always believe, just as a coach that I've been able to do, I always want my defense to be ahead of my offense. And so those are things that I really emphasize early on is defensive and how we move and how we rotate and how we communicate. All those things, those are the things that I try to lead off my first few practices with just to establish that. And we can get to the offense. We can always generate our offense. If we can generate our offense from our defense, great, but I never want my offense to be ahead of my defense. Again, for me, that's the way we like to start off. Again, I think our players have to understand, and basketball players and teams have to understand in general that your starting point is a big deal as you go into a season, how you start anything. It doesn't mean that's how you're going to finish, but you want to get off to a good start.
And as you already referenced, I imagine you start with hard work no matter what you're doing. So that's a big emphasis that shines through. And of course, like in sharing your success in the beginning with your bio, you've sustained this over multiple programs, multiple places from USA basketball to high school and everything in between. So how do you balance the expectations of winning with the development of young players? Ultimately, that's a challenge.
Yeah, first of all, for the expectation factor, and I tell my players this all the time, when you have expectations placed on you or as part of what you're doing, I think you have to attack expectations. You cannot let expectations attack you because then they become a burden. I think attacking expectations, and we have a pretty good team this year, and there's some lofty expectations for us out there. And I told our guys, we're not going to back away from the expectations. We're going to attack them. And I think that's big because it's a sign of how you go about attacking the situation and trying to be the aggressor, so to speak. And I believe in that for my teams. We want to be the aggressor coming out any game. We want to hit first. We want to do those things. And I think having that mindset, again, it parallels to life itself. And it's a big part of how you go about managing those expectations or what have you.
I love that part of it. And the proactive nature of that philosophy is no doubt one of the reasons for your success. And I'm curious, maybe over the course of your career, then, how have you adapted your approach to coaching?
You have to evolve. You really have to evolve. You have to see where the game is and make adjustments. And that has become a fun part for me. I thought I was going to be this old school guy that did it the same way, every year, the same year out. But as years went by, I evolved and I started learning that, okay, I got this type of team. I won't be able to play this type of way with this type of team. Everybody asks me, what's your style? What do you like? What's your favorite thing? My teams dictate that. I don't dictate. My teams dictate that. And if we have, let's say we got 6'9", 6'9", 6'8" front line, we're probably gonna do a lot of things where we're going inside. We're gonna try to pound you inside, and we're gonna try to do some high-low stuff or what have you. But I've had teams where I had one person 6'5" and everybody else was basically guards, and we play like Villanova played when those guys that Jay Wright had that year, Kyle and all those guys. So it's just you have to adjust. And I think I'm using that as an example of how you have to evolve. And like right now, you look at the way the games play offensively, you see a lot of gets, you see a lot of things of that nature and ghosting and just different philosophies. And I've just loved the way that I've been able to evolve into that because it's fun. It makes the game a lot more fun. And it's for me as a coach, it just makes it fun to be able to adapt. And even with the players themselves, they're different. They're different than they were 5 years ago. And we ain't talking about 20 years ago. I'm talking about they're different than they're 5 years ago. So you have to adapt how you reach them and how you go about trying to make them see the things that they need to see to be successful.
Love that answer and that approach. And I know that you also have had a big role now that you're moving into, and you've always done this in your career, but in terms of mentoring and an advisory role with USA Basketball after all your success there. So talk to us a little bit about your philosophy in terms of mentoring other coaches and preparing them for bigger roles and more success in their coaching.
The part I love about that is because I watch younger coaches or coaches that I mentor, because I mentor a lot of coaches here locally in the state. And just to be able to, some of the questions that they ask me, it's so fascinating because I remember those questions that I had and how I was able to figure it out or get the answers to those questions, whether it was from another coach or whether it's just the experience itself. But I love to be able to share what I have to this game. This game has given me everything. That $20 basketball has taken me places I would have never, ever thought it would have. And so for me, I owe it to the game to be able to go and share what it is. I speak at tons of clinics, but I love giving back to the game. I love telling younger coaches, giving younger coaches little nuggets to be able to help them get through it. I get texts, I get emails all the time from different coaches. I try to answer and call back everyone I can because I remember being in that position. And that means everything to a coach. For sometimes it might just take a simple text answer back about a simple question, but it means everything. And I think that's how we continue to make our game grow. We always talk about growing the game. That's how we grow the game. We got to continue to invest back into it, whether it's with our players or whether it's with other coaches. We got to continue to invest back into it.
I felt that from both our conversation about that and also your curiosity to learn more. And just, I can really encourage coaches that Coach White is a tremendous resource to be able to be around and to be able to interact with. And it's going to be great to see you move forward even further in this role. And then talking a little bit more about some of the things that I think are important for people like you to talk about to coaches that are listening, particularly around managing your emotions and managing your ability to be able to handle the highs and lows of coaching. Because even with all your success, you've still had lows, and that's a part of your journey. Can you talk a little bit about how you now balance that at this point in your career?
Man, it's an ebb and flow to it. We tell players all the time, you're gonna have peaks and you're gonna have valleys. Same thing for you as a coach. I think your approach to the highs and your approach to the lows have to be like similar in how you approach it. I tell guys, don't act like it's your first time or your last time. But it's a lot of different things I say to try to make sure that, but what I tell myself too is regardless of what happens, you got to live to fight another day, basically. And whether it's something good, whether it's something that's not good, or something that's a challenge that's been presented before you, I think you have to, like I say, attack those challenges. And it's not always easy. I always tell coaches that this is probably one of the toughest professions from the standpoint of with the ebbs and flows of it. You can be feeling good about something and you find out today your player did something that he shouldn't have done and now he's out for like it's so many different things, whether it's injuries, whether it's this, that, and the other. I think you just have to be able to approach each situation the same way and not have an even keel mindset. And it's not always easy. I tell coaches, people say you're so calm on the sidelines. You don't really say a lot. I tell people I coach in practice. I just make adjustments in the games. I don't really get into coaching in the games because I've done my coaching in practice. So yeah, you come to my practice, you might hear me yell a little bit. You might hear me get on some guys. But when it get to the game, I need to be thinking about adjustments. I don't need to be thinking about how much I need to yell at this kid or how much I need to be screaming about what. Because to me, I do all that in practice. I make sure I do all my coaching in practice. And I try to tell younger coaches that as well. And I'm not trying to say I got the perfect demeanor for it or what have you, but I just know it's been effective for me. And I learned that from a coach that I worked up under when I first started coaching. And I remember him telling me that, and I didn't understand it at the time. But I do remember when he said it, and he said, you don't coach in the games, you make adjustments in the games. You should be coaching in practice because he heard me yelling. I think that was my first year coaching. I was yelling and going crazy on the sideline and just grabbing my head and he was like, "No, that's not it. You do all that stuff in practice.
That's
Your
awesome.
kids need to see you calm in the game."
That's incredible advice. And I hope coaches, especially young coaches, take that to heart. And that's absolutely true. And the players are the show in the game, not us. And that's hard. That's hard for us to sometimes understand as a coach. But I want to use your expertise as well, because this is something that's really come shone through for me in my involvement with all these different areas that I'm involved in, especially with my young daughters playing basketball in the youth space. And that's this rise of individual player branding, personal trainers, and all the aspects around that. And how do you keep it focused on the team, on their development?
It's very challenging because it's become such an individualized sport. It's become a sport where people spend more time working on individual things than they do team things. And you understand it from a standpoint of development, but being a high school coach and being like a USA basketball junior national team head coach, you have to think team. And so you can do all, I always tell guys, you can do all the things you want individually to get better, but what are you doing to make the team better? And what I mean by that is if everything you're doing is just working for what you can do, this is not golf, this is not tennis. You have to play with other guys and you have to be able to figure out what it is that's going to make you effective as a team. And I just hope with this whole new individualized frame of thought that people don't lose the value of team sports and winning and accomplishing something together that you couldn't accomplish alone, especially in our sport. So it's a tricky deal. It's where we are right now.
And that's one of the dangers in travel AAU type basketball, that there's almost no value placed behind winning in some ways. It's on to the next game, and then you play multiple games, and then some players play for multiple teams. So it's really difficult. And that's where the value of high school programs and programs like yourself help shape that for team behaviors and players as well. But any other kind of advice in terms of that and those experiences that kind of you've been around dealing with different players with different expectations?
Yeah, I think like I've had the honor to be able to coach a lot of really good players, whether it was my own high school players or whether it was USA basketball players or what have you. I would think that the resounding thing or the thing that keeps reoccurring when I'm having those opportunities is to build those relationships where those kids can understand where you are coming from a coaching perspective. And I've had the luxury of coaching the Cooper Flags of the world, some of these guys, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey. And when you get those opportunities and they understand that like in all those settings, it was about the team. It was about the team. It was about the team. And so my job was when I got in front of them the first time was to talk about the team. You all are all individual, unbelievable players. But when you look at the United States or USA basketball men's national team, and you see the Kevin Durant's and LeBron James and the Steph Curry's, those guys, they don't what they do for their teams with when they're with Golden State, the Lakers, or when they're with Kevin Durant, when he's with the Suns, what they do with their teams is totally different from what they do with USA basketball. And so using that platform and using those instances where you get those type of players or you get your players in general, you got to make them understand it's about the team, man. Even with my own team here at Pace, we got some really good players. It's about how good of a team we are that's going to be marked in the books at the end. It's not going to be about how good of a player you were individually. That everything that everybody else will see that and they'll be the ones to judge that. But when it comes down to the team, how will you be judged as a player when it comes to that?
It's great stuff, Coach. And I want to ask, I've been asked this a little bit recently, is about in season, particularly as a high school, balancing. What strategies do you use to integrate skill work, or do you integrate skill work into team concepts in practice during the season?
Absolutely. I think it's a necessity. And I think it keeps your team together. And I say that because, yeah, guys can go get individual work, but if you provide that platform for them within the base of what you're doing during the season, it keeps your guys more so even together. I can give you several examples of our team. Like we have player development segments of our practice every other day where we your position work where we got the front court guys working together, got the back court guys working together, and then we hybrid it and let them work together. There's parts of our offense, but we do that throughout the season, and I don't let 2 days go by without us doing some individual position work within practice development work. We even have development segments of practice where we're working on ball handling. We might be working on different things, but I also do things like we've started this thing where we lift after games just so we can stay together and guys can continue to work. That's how you build a chemistry. That's how you build a synergy amongst guys because you have to have that. Because, like I say, they can always do those things outside of your team. But why let's keep it in house and let's work together and let's keep building our synergy. And so when we go on the court, I can remember after that game, we were like dead tired after playing a game, and we went in the weight room and we killed it for 30 minutes with our strength trainer because that's what we're about. And I think you have to put those things in position. It might not always be possible, but you got to try to figure out how to make those things possible.
Coach, Pace Academy, a unique setup, but I think a needed setup and hopefully a future vision for some schools is like to have basketball integrated from sixth grade on up and have some synergies. And people ask me about Europe, and I'd say one of the biggest differences in Europe is a player generally plays in a program for a club for 2 years with one team, 2 years with the next team, 2 years with the next team, and there's a progression, there's a synergy. Is that something that's important to you at Pace and something that you've been able to put together there?
Absolutely. Like I said, being the head coach of the varsity program here, I operate as the CEO of the whole entire program. And so I have to treat it as such. And so our middle school programs I'm fully invested with them. I'm always around. I'm meeting with their coaches. We're running. I'm making sure that they understand what those kids need to know as they matriculate. We want to create a pathway for those kids. And so I think that's the most important part. So I do a lot with them. I will go in and I'll help out with tryouts and I'll be on the floor there. Those kids will hear my voice at an early age. They won't have to wait until I never feel like, and this goes for me and my staff. We are all in. Like the guys who work at the varsity level with us and even at the JV level, we always go down and help out and be a part of. And we go to the games and we have our players to go to the games and they are a part of the practices. We do those things only so that everybody that comes through that door, starting at the sixth grade, they feel a part of not just a program, but a family. And I think that's big for our kids in our school. And that's why it's probably one of the more popular sports at our school because we really feel like that's what makes it something that kids want to do.
And you mentioned pathway. It's a legitimate pathway that players could move from middle school on up. Because sometimes we give this lip service, but then a lot of programs as just recruit players in, and those middle school kids never get to play.
No, we have to create that pathway. We got kids that have been here, we call them lifers, and this has been their biggest dream. And so we've got to be able to we have camps in the summer that they attend. So you can see them matriculate. And it's, to me as a coach, it's so rewarding to see kids that might have came to me. Since I've been at Pace, I've had kids that come to my camp that now play for me. Like Jackson Ferry, Danny Ferry's son, he came to my camp when he was like right before middle school. And now he's a starting guard for me. But it's just one of those things that it's priceless when you talk about seeing that pathway come to realization. And there are going to be situations out there where, yeah, we might get a kid or two, but there's always going to be room for that, for those kids that are invested into it and have put the time in for them to find their pathway and be able to enjoy the experience. And that's the most important part. Enjoy the experience. I've had kids that we've won state championships since I've been here, and they play college basketball and what have you, and we got some that don't, but they always come back and say, man, this was the most fun I've had playing this game. And so when you got kids that play for the University of Miami or play for Cincinnati, and they say, Coach, man, we had, because now it's a job. That's a job now, and it's not the same. But you got all these things that matriculate around college basketball with the NIL, and you got to play, you got to perform. If you don't perform, you won't play. If you won't play, you're probably going to transfer and all this stuff. And it's still a little bit pure here at this level, and we want to try to keep it there as long as we can.
I love that. That's special for sure. And coach, I got to ask the influence of international basketball on yourself. Maybe what are some of the lessons or some of the things that you've brought back from your experiences internationally that have helped you develop?
One thing I can say about being able to coach USA basketball and being able to go against some of the top, countries in the world, whether it's World Cup or whether it's U16 qualifying tournament, is the attention to detail and the skill level. I'll be honest with you, we have some phenomenal athletes in this country, and we got some guys that are really skilled and they're really good. And when you play against other countries, you can see the evidence of skill being taught at a young age and how to play and not necessarily a play. I'm big on, I go back to my middle school coaches, what have you, and I always tell them we can teach them plays, but I rather teach them how to play. And if they know how to play, when I'm teaching them plays, it becomes that much more easier for them. But that's one thing you can pick up on. They pride themselves, when I'm talking about international teams, on execution. They pride themselves on it, and they do a really good job of that. And so just to be able to go against that, and then you see some of the different concepts they do with like the Spain screens and all these different things that how they try to do a good job of trying to compete. And in a lot of cases, we've been fortunate on the junior national level, but worldly, it's a fight out there going against these international teams because they do such a good job teaching the game and being able to execute what it is they're trying to do.
Yeah, awesome. What great experiences. And another thing I want to get your expertise on is this mental well-being, mental health for young players in particular, and some of the areas that you focus on to be able to help them navigate not just life, but school and basketball and the balance of all these things together.
Man, it's a really big issue in our community as a whole, not just basketball, but when it comes to basketball, and like for me and for what I'm doing here at Pace and just abroad, just period, I think building relationships with the players and it starts with touch points. I try to create touch points for my players, whether it's, like I say, my own Pace players or whether it's USA. I got a big box. If you looked at my office, I got a big box of snacks, and I make sure it's filled up every week. I have parents donating to it and what have you, but it creates opportunities for touch points for me and my players because they always coming by getting snacks. And so while you're grabbing a snack, how you doing today? What's going on? Let's talk a little bit about how you played last night, but it creates touch points. And I think the more I can, be able to have those touch points, I'll have a better idea of what they're thinking and what they're going through. And it gives them an opportunity to also express themselves and communicate to me what it is that's going on. And so it's just a way I don't want something to happen or something to be a challenge because it was a lack of communication or a lack of touch points. And so I try to create them as much as possible I love shoot around because I get a chance to go around and talk to pretty much every kid during shoot around and just find out where they are, and maybe say a joke or tell me about their girlfriend and whatever the case might be. But I think those opportunities allows for what young players need, and that's the need to be able to feel to be heard and to be cared about and be supported, and that helps in that area. I don't have the answers for it all, but I feel like those are steps that I've personally taken and I've shared with other people to take to try to create those opportunities.
You mentioned being adaptable as a coach and adapting throughout your career to different styles. And what is your preferred way to play right now with this team that you have? Is there something that stands out in terms of, hey, I'm really liking this and doing this type of thing offensively or defensively in terms of tactics?
Yeah, we've got a pretty versatile team. Offensively, we can do a lot of different things. What I've studied every year, I study a different team, or whether it's an NBA team or a college team. And this summer, I studied the Denver Nuggets wholeheartedly. Did a deep dive in a lot of things because we had some guys that are similar to. I won't say they're that good because these guys are NBA guys, but they play in a way where I feel like the things that what Denver does, we could do it and we can play through our big guys. And we got guys that can pitch it and get it back and go make plays. And so that's the way we've been playing. We've been playing a game where it's like playing catch and go play and shoot a ball screen in there every once in a while or shoot a ghost screen in there every once in a while. But it creates a lot of different confusion for the offense or for the defense. And we just try to utilize our versatility because, again, we got some big guys that can handle and they can shoot it. And so we try to do different things to get them those opportunities to be able to showcase that and help us. It's so far so good. It's been a lot of fun. And that's my point back to adapting to your team because I couldn't play this way with the team we had last year. We had to play a totally different, we had to play a lot faster. And this year we're still playing fast, but we don't have to play at the rate we had to play last year to be successful. And again, just the adaptability to be able to find the identity of your team and what's going to make you successful, and then also make that a part of what's how will it help them for the next level if they're fortunate enough to play. How can you help put them in position to be successful at the next level, which is part of I feel like my responsibility as a high school coach.
Well, and it's going to make you guys fun to watch. So I look forward to watching some of that as well. And coach, if somebody asks you to speak at a clinic and says, hey, I'll give you carte blanche to speak on any topic you want, what at this point in your career does Coach White decide to speak on?
Early on, it would have been defense. It would have been defense. I love coaching defense. But I'll be honest with you, the last 7 or 8 years, I have really enjoyed coaching the offensive side of the ball because all the different things that are evolving in our game, the European feel to it, and some of the things that you can do with guys that are athletic but know how to play and try to keep the defense guessing and try to teach kids how to read the game and see the game so the game can slow down for them. So I've really been more on the offensive side. I love early offense. I love establishing something early in the possession that gives us a little freedom. And playing with a shot clock here in Georgia helps too because it teaches our guys how you can, those first 8 seconds, you can try to do what you need to do in the first 8 seconds. After that, and we got to figure out what we want to do next. And offense has really been part of like my thing for the last, and I think I had created a thing for ATOs and like I've just really taken to that side of the ball, but I still love my defense, and that's gonna be the first thing we're gonna talk about in practice. And they're gonna be the first part of practice. We're gonna be defensive oriented the first 30 minutes or so of practice.
So fun. Your passion for coaching shines through. It's just beautiful to hear. But I got to ask, Coach, you're also an administrator. And I know this is a challenge for coaches in the high school space and travel space and any space they're involved in. So talk to us a little bit about the relationship and how to build that relationship and how to, again, put administrators on your team, because that synergy with your administration is a key part, I imagine, to some of your success over the years.
Absolutely. I've always believed that. At Pace right now, I'm the associate AD, and when I was at my previous schools, I was 80 for a while, but I've been in a situation where I wasn't in one of those administrative positions. But what I've told younger coaches, and I do this when I speak to them about programming, is you got to form a team, whether it's with the administrators, the secretaries, the custodians, all the people that are going to be a part of those players that you coach. They're going to be a part of their lives at school. And I do that because I want to have a team that's going to, it's building a community around your players, that a community of support. And so what I would do with all those different people, I give them t-shirts, I invite them to games, I make them a part of that family so that when a kid is late to school and the tardy secretary, she calls me and say, hey, such and such hasn't made it to school yet. But if you don't have those relationships with those people in the school, you never know that, and it's too late, and now they're in trouble and they can't sit out a game or whatever the case might be. But you got to build a team. And I think it's important that the teachers in general know that you're partnering with them as well, because when Johnny isn't performing in the classroom and they know that he loves basketball, so they need something to be able to say, hey, we know you love basketball, but you got to do this first. And they need the support of a coach. And I think working hand in hand with them, like likewise with the administrators, me being a part of the admin staff, I get a lot of coaches to come to my office and they ask me different questions about different facets of coaching and how should they handle this situation and what should they do about this. And I gladly help them with it because I'm looking at it not only through a coach's lens, but I'm looking at it through an administrator lens too. So I can again go back to the microscope telescope mentality, because as an administrator, you got to be looking through the telescope. You got to be able to see the thing way out and not just look at it for what's right there in front of you.
Man, so many good answers, coach. And look, when I was at USAB, one of my favorite things was to talk to the individual coaches and hear about their pathway to get involved. And these are a lot of established, successful coaches in their own right. So I'm just curious from your perspective, there's successful coaches out there that maybe aspire to be involved at that level in some way. Where should they start? Where is it all begin? We understand network and knowledge, but more logically, where should they start?
And you mean USA basketball specifically?
Sure, like getting
Okay.
involved at the level that you've
Yeah,
been in, but even just getting involved in a mini camp or you have
absolutely.
all these regional things going
Mhm.
on, all these different things.
Absolutely.
There's so many
Absolutely.
pathways.
Yeah, I tell coaches when they ask me that, I tell them, first of all, come to a mini camp. Come experience a mini camp. Come to Colorado Springs or wherever we're at in the Final Four for that mini camp. Come and see a mini camp just so you can get the experience of what it's like. And we let any coaches that want to come, they can come and be a part of it and just watch. And then you got to start figuring out your pathway by your virtue of attend some of the coaching academies, get to know people, get to touch people. And Coach Showalter is great about that, getting out and meeting people and doing the academies all over the country. And go let them know your interest. And because they have several camps that coaches can be a part of. And the great part about, I'll just use USA basketball as an example, they graduate guys, meaning they elevate guys and they move guys around. They're very good with that. It's not just the same guys every time. We brought in maybe 9 new coaches for this mini camp we just had this past fall. And it was all their first time. They were all nervous. And I can remember getting calls from a few of them before they came. And I'm just telling them, hey, man, just be yourself, pay attention to detail, and just coach your butt off. And these are same coaches that were asking me years ago, how do I get involved? But it's a steady process of just, first of all, taking it in and then start connecting the dots and start meeting and start going to different academies. And it's not really a magic pill per se, besides the fact that you got to show your passion, improve your passion to want to do it. And you do those things by going out and being a part of.
Love it. Great answer. Great insights in terms of all that. And Coach White, it's long overdue to have you on the podcast. And I cannot thank you enough for sharing with us. And this won't be the last time. And we all are grateful for you to share the game with us. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me. And Chris, like I said, man, I'm a big fan of yours and your work and how you go about teaching the game and just growing our game specifically. And thank you again for having me on. Thank you for doing this for all the basketball coaches out there. And continue to just keep up the great work with the NBA.
Thank you.